It's valid to ask, what tools do I have to engage with the news media? Should I hold a press conference, provide a press release? Should I pitch an op-ed? Should I submit a video? I'd like to briefly touch on each one of these points. Now, briefly now about press conferences. The correct way to think about a press conference is that it is an information tool. It is a method to bring the news media and your experts together to promote your issues or announce an important initiative. Unfortunately, many organizations still see the press conference as theater, a way to shine the bright light of the news media on the organization and especially on its officials. Now, these busy news people we've been talking about recognize that, and that is why for news organizations, a press conference is not normally a news event. News decision makers see press conferences for what most of them are: staged events about promotion and theater and not about news. So, to make your press conference either in person or online successful, and that means, first of all, getting the news media to show up, and then getting your information across clearly, and then getting the coverage, you've got to make it newsworthy. Identify and choose a news angle that you think will have a chance of getting attention and coverage. Now that means deciding, what is the story? Why should anyone care? What is new? What is unusual? What has changed? What breaks a stereotype or preconception? How are people affected? A good exercise is simply to prepare a press release that starts with your news angle and then explain the details of what is to be said at the press conference, and of course include your relevant contact information. The next tool I want to talk about is the press release. Now, press releases are a notoriously poor form of communication. Very rarely does a press release deliver the intended result, which is to inspire or persuade the news media to cover your story. Now, while many organizations believe that sending out a press release is an essential element of any communications effort, the target audience sees it much differently. And yes, that's the source of a lot of frustration and misunderstanding. But for the news media, press releases are not unique or special. Newsrooms get dozens of them a day and hundreds every month. They are about you and not about what audiences want. They are about spin, they are about selling, they are not about news. So for news organizations, sorting through all those press releases is mostly a waste of time, particularly in today's very pressurized and demanding news environment. The result is most press releases are immediately thrown away or used as scratch paper, but it does not have to be that way. To create a successful press release, focus 95% of your time and energy on the headline and the first paragraph. The rest doesn't matter if the producer or editor isn't compelled to read on. Effective headlines for press releases are short. They are clear. They are easy to understand. They are provocative. They compel the reader to read on, and they are human. They show how people are affected. Here are a couple of examples. Not proposed regulatory framework for workers in the informal sector. Better, region's poorest workers will get protection under new law. Not new employment rules for export processing zones. Better, hundreds of workers in EPZs face job cuts. Now, the first sentence should immediately tell what is newsworthy and why the reader and their audience should care. For example, 353 jobs in the new export processing zones, EPZs, could be cut because of the region's new employment regulations. It would be the single biggest loss of jobs in the region in more than 5 years. The first paragraph must explain the significance of the news in your press release. Who is directly affected, when it is happening, and where it is happening. This is not the place to explain who attended a meeting or prepared a study. The workers could lose their jobs as early as next year when the regulations go into effect. They were recruited from low-income areas in an innovative pilot program to work at the EPZs, which are located on the outskirts of the region's largest city. The second paragraph is the place for a quote from the author of the report or an official with the key message from your organization. The head of the Employers Association said the job cuts are unavoidable unless the new rules are changed and wants the government to take action. Now, by the end of the second paragraph, the editor or producer has enough information to know if it is a story worth covering. That's it. Now, finally, the contact information must appear at the end, and I would say by far it's the most important element of an effective press release. The contact name is a person who can be reached immediately by journalists wanting more information. Now, if your issue is in the news and is being widely discussed or debated, submitting an op-ed piece to a newspaper's editorial board can be effective in moving your agenda forward. An op-ed is longer than a letter to the editor, and it strongly expresses an opinion. It is not balanced or neutral, and it is intended to inspire further debate or discussion on the issue and hopefully raise the profile of your leading expert or the head of your department. I would like to speak briefly now about placing video material on the news or pitching your own video content. One picture is worth 1,000 words is still true even in our media-saturated age. Television and ever increasingly the online medium is all about pictures and not about text. If your organization can provide those pictures, you might have a better chance of getting your message out to the public in the way you think it should be told. So my suggestion is, when you think about your program, your project, or initiative, what is the picture that tells the story? And you're in a position of advantage already because many organizations have broadcast quality equipment and even camera teams on hand, which can provide the kind of footage that television stations, networks, and online news sites can use in their reporting. The caveat is that legitimate news organizations are very selective about what images they put on their newscasts, and they are particularly cautious if they did not shoot the material themselves. That being said, though, if you can provide video material that meets the standards television and online news organizations expect, that increases the likelihood it will be used in coverage of your story. That, in turn, can legitimize your video content and your issue for large audiences, so it's a goal worth reaching for. My tip for you is to make it easy for news organizations to cover your issue or initiative. I suggest creating a bank of professional quality archive material relating to your issue shot in broadcast standards using professional equipment. Reach out to your network or journalist contacts and provide them with a short pitch reel of not more than 2 to 3 minutes showing the quality of the material you have available to illustrate your issue and a contact list of the key interview partners from your organization. This plays into what we already know, first of all, that most journalists are not experts in your issue, and secondly, they don't have the time or the resources to chase down the exact images they need for your story. They may be very grateful for what you can provide them, and by the way, don't charge for the video. Most news organizations will not pay for that, but do insist on an on-camera credit for your organization, such as footage provided by ngo.int.